Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of USINDO, Indonesia U.S. Council on Religion and Pluralism, Setara Institute for Democracy and Peace, and Wahid Foundation, we welcome you to our special open forum today. We thank our excellent panel, and excuse me for standing right in front of them, Professor Scarps, Ibu Yeni Wahid, Mr. Amin, which is our wonderful moderator for today, Dr. Ferry Meldi, and Bapak Baby Yonesta. Without further ado, we begin our special forum today. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for attending this agenda, cooperation between USINDO, Indonesian U.S. Council on Religion and Pluralism, Setara Institute, and Wahid Foundation. First, I have to ask your forgiveness for Mr. Bonarti Gornay Pospos that he cannot attend this meeting and send me to represent him. My name is Aminuddin Sharif. I am a researcher at Setara Institute for Democracy and Peace. Today, I am a moderator for this open discussion with first speaker, Professor Scarps, Mbak Yeni Wahid, Bapak Dr. Ferry Meldi, and Mas Baby Yonesta. Our guests, today we want to discuss about relation between religious minorities, majorities, and the state in Indonesia and the United States, current trend and issues. For the first speaker, I will give to Mbak Yeni to deliver. We ignore the protocol.
Oh my God.
Miss Yeni from Wahid Foundation. She is Indonesian co-chair for the Indonesian U.S. Council on Religion and Pluralism, as well as the executive director of Wahid Foundation, which champions the humanitarian vision of former President Abdurrahman Wahid in advancing the development of tolerant, multicultural, democratic, and non-violent society in Indonesia. She is a social and political activist who works to promote peace and tolerance. Her family's influence within Nahdlatul Ulama or NU enables her to work effectively on the grassroots level. Her work experience, including working as an assistant correspondent for Australian newspaper, the Sydney Morning Herald, and the Age Melbourne, working as special staff for the 6th President of Indonesia, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, and working as Secretary General for the biggest Muslim party in Indonesia. She received many awards and accolades, such as Australian Weekly Award for her coverage of conflict in East Timor and Champion of Children Awards from UNICEF for her work promoting children's rights. She was also a class speaker at Harvard Kennedy School of Government. As a member of prominent political dynasty in Indonesia, her grandfather founded NU and as a minister in President Suharto's cabinet. Her father, President Wahid, was the 4th president of Indonesia. Yeni is expected to follow on the political footsteps one day. At the moment, she prefers to focus on her works to promote peace on the grassroots by trying to empower many marginalized women through her foundation. The time, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mas Amin.
Looks like he already decided my future. Professor Brett Hart, did I pronounce it right? Charles. Dr. Ferry Maldi, as well as Bapak Penny Yanesta and Mas Amin, ladies and gentlemen. I get asked many times by usually foreign friends or journalists or activists about Ahok's case. And I always say that if you want to understand Ahok's case, you only need to look at the US election. So, a case in which some political interest groups and even some political parties use popular sentiments, and in this issue, religious sentiments, to advance their political purposes. So that was the gist of Ahok's case. The other thing, the Al-Maida, whatever the blasphemy case and all that, were just instruments in those mechanisms, in the same dynamics that we saw. And this is also no different to what happened in France election, for example, with Marine Le Pen, with Pauline Hanson in Australia, that politicians would rather provide people with simplistic answers to complicated problems. The same line of psyche, the same line of instinct, political instinct. So Indonesia has the highest ranking, occupies the highest ranking, according to one of the global surveys, on the importance of religions in a society. So for Indonesians, religion is one of the key things in life. That's how deep people feel about religious sentiment here. And with that kind of backdrop, it's understandable, or it's easy to understand, not understandable, it's easy to understand why religion then managed to be used in such a way for political purposes. And in my opinion, this will not be the last case of religious issues being utilized for political purposes. At the White Foundation, we in the past 7 years, we came up with an index of religious violations of religious beliefs. We took notes of many cases that can be seen as violations or acts of discriminations against religious followers or followers of certain beliefs. We have a Gavatar group here from Gavatar. They're one of the victims, of course, and they present in our case studies, not case studies, sorry, in our reports in the past few years. So, in the past 2 years, for example, there is an increase, 7% increase of cases of religious violations. So when I say religious violations, please bear with me, because some people might define it in different way when you hear the term religious violations. But here it means that it's a cases in which religious sentiments is used to violate other people's rights. So in 2016, for example, we've got a 2004 events as well as 315 acts of religious violations. An increase to the previous year, 190 events and 249 acts, so 7% increase. And you might wonder, but this is happening during Jokowi's era. This sounds almost like a counterintuitive. And but the problem is, these cases are not done by usually done not by the blessings from the state. We group the two violators, or the two actors of these violations, into two different categories: the state actors and the non-state actors. And the non-state actors usually are the highest three are the police and the local governments, can be the city government or the regencies, as well as the coordination unit for beliefs, yeah, it's usually under the local religious ministry unit. So those are the state actors that we have recorded have violated the religious beliefs. But the non-state actors are quite predictable as well. The first one, none other than the FBI. Surprise, surprise, is the Islamic Defender Forum, headed by none other than the very famous or infamous Habib Rizik now. And then the masses, unidentified masses, because they could be using all sorts of flags, different flags for different purposes, and could be calling themselves any names at all. So that's the second largest groupings of non-state actors. The third one is the local ulama council. So these three are the highest ranking when it comes to violators of religious beliefs. So we also did a national survey last year to get a snapshot, to get a sense of the level of intolerance and radicalism in Indonesia. And the finding is not too rosy. It's the good news and the bad news. The good news is 7% of the society, 0.4% of the society had committed radical acts in the past. That consisted of attacking other people's religious beliefs, what happened to Jakarta, for example, or attacking places that's deemed to be immoral places or against the Sharia, or donating to radical groups that try to promote Sharia. So there are 5 indicators that we use to call an act as a radical act. So 0.4% of the society. And 7.7% of the society potentially are willing to commit such crime if given a chance in the future. You might think, oh, 0.4% plus 7.7%, nothing, because 74% are actually against radicalism. So that's a good news, 74%. But if you look at the previous numbers again, if we project it against the population of Indonesia, then you've got 600,000 of people who had committed radical acts in the past, and 11 millions of people, the same number of the populations of Jakarta plus Bali, who are willing to do radical acts in the future, given the chance. So that's really bad. But, okay, I've got 3 minutes left. Okay. Anyway, so what are these? Why are these happening? You know, and what are the factors that led to this kind of sentiments? So, in our opinion, radicalism could happen anywhere. And the factors that led to radicalism, that has positive correlations to radicalism, are not education, level of education, level of income, or where you live, whether you live in the city or in the village. This is all the previous assumptions that people tend to hold before. But according to the survey, all these factors do not have any positive correlations to radicalization. So what has positive correlation to radicalization? One is a sense of deprivation and a sense of alienation. So if you feel that there is an injustice happening around you, if you feel that there's something that needs to be corrected in the system, then you've got a tendency to want to do something. And then when you couple it with the next factor, which is exposure to radical materials, hateful speeches, hateful sermons, then you've got people who are ready to commit radical acts. So a youth, for example, youth in Indonesia and a youth in LA are quite the same when they are in that stage of life where they're looking for meanings in life. But in the US, for example, when people feel restless by, for example, the income disparity in the society, they go against the Wall Street, demonstrate against the Wall Street, the 1% of the society, demonstrate against all these, the Wall Street. But here, or at worst, youth there, when frustrated, they go into drugs, they go into petty criminal acts, robbing moms and pop stores in LA, for example. But here in Indonesia, if a youth is frustrated, a youth feels strongly that he wants to do something about the system. He feels that there's such a disparity that people are not being treated fairly. Then they will, then when they meet a certain ulama, certain religious clerics, who then infiltrate their thoughts with radical thoughts, then that's it. You've got a person who's ready to do the jihad. So those are, and the third factor is if that someone feels or thinks that jihad has to be about war, then that person is also very prone to being radicalized. So these are all the factors that led to radicalization. So Ahok's case, let's go back to Ahok's case. There's actually silver lining to what happened. Some of you might disagree, but for me, it's good because it serves as a wake-up call for the majority of the society. Because now they're awakened to the fact that the space is too long being controlled or being occupied by the radical elements. Now it's time for the silent majority not to remain silent, but to become a noisy majority. With that, I end my
Thank you, Mbak Yeni, for explaining us about the condition in Indonesia. This is my third description on Indonesia because we have two more that will complete Mbak Yeni's description. And now we will hear about the condition on the United States itself. Professor Brad T. Sharp will explain it. I just knew about condition on America just a little bit because like 3 months, these 3 months, I have a little chat with Alison Dimase. She is an intern in Star Institute for these 3 months and will end up in this July. We talked a little about how America and about the life and etc. etc. But we will hear more comprehensively from Professor Schaff to describe the relation between majorities and minorities religion in the United States. The time is yours. I will read for the little about Professor. He is Francis L. Crichton Professor of Law and Director of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies at Brigham Young University Law School. His teaching and scholarly interests including law and religion, legal reasoning and rhetoric, philosophy of law, and legislation and regulation. He is a visiting professor at Central European University in Budapest and at the University of Adelaide Law School. He has previously taught at Yale University and the George Washington University. For several years, he has been helping to organize certified training programs in the region and the rule of law in China and in Vietnam, and has taught and helped organize programs at several Indonesian universities on Sharia and human rights. He recently has also spoken at G20 Interfaith Summit 2017. Prior to his current position, Professor Schaff worked as an attorney for the New York law firm Sullivan and Cromwell, a law clerk on the U.S. Court of Appeals, DC Circuit, and legal assistant for the Iran-U.S. Claims Tribunal in The Hague. Author of more than 100 articles and book chapters, he has made more than 30 underscore representation in 30 countries. His book, Law and Religion, National, International, and Comparative Perspective, has been translated into Chinese and Vietnamese, with Turkish, Burmese, Indonesian, and Arab in process. Professor Schaff received as a BSBA in International Business and an MA in Philosophy at Georgetown University, and as a Rhodes Scholar earned a Phil in Philosophy at Oxford. He received his GED from Yale Law University, from the Yale Law School.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation to be here and to share the panel with such distinguished speakers. I will try to be brief and want to try to make 4 basic points. The first has to do with the role of religious majorities in the atmosphere of religious freedom in a country. For the past decade, the Pew Research Center has been conducting a series of studies on restrictions on religious freedom. And they measure 2 types of restrictions, legal restrictions and social hostilities. So this sort of maps what Yenny is talking about of having restrictions come from state actors and non-state actors. And what I have done is I've taken their research and I've correlated it with dominant religious groups. And the outcome is rather striking. In the last study, there were 18 countries that had very high legal restrictions on religious freedom. And of those 18 countries, 14 had a dominant religious group of 70% or more in the population. And of countries with high legal restrictions, of the 36 countries, 30 had a dominant religious group, over 70%. The information on social hostilities is very similar. 14 out of 17 countries with very high social hostilities had a dominant religious group of 70% or more, and 30 out of 36 countries with high social hostilities had a dominant religious group of 70% or more. As you would expect, perhaps, many of these countries have Muslim supermajorities, but it's not limited to Muslim supermajority countries. Hindu supermajority countries, Buddhist supermajority countries, and Orthodox Christian supermajority countries also tend to have high or very high legal restrictions and social hostilities. There is, however, an exception. There are 33 countries in the world where Catholics represent 70% or more of the population. And in 0 of those countries are there very high or high legal restrictions, and in 0 of those countries are there very high social hostilities. There are only 2 countries, Mexico and Italy, with high social hostilities. What I conclude from this, and I've written an article in the Notre Dame Law Review in a symposium issue celebrating the 50th anniversary of Dignitatis Humanae. I attribute this to the Catholic doctrine of religious freedom that we see coming out of Vatican II. If you ask the question 200 years ago, what is the most powerful institution on earth that opposes religious freedom? I think the answer probably would have been the Catholic Church. If you ask the same question today, what is the most powerful institution on earth that defends religious freedom for all? I think the answer would be the Catholic Church. To me, this is really interesting because what we see is this came through the interpretation of Catholic doctrine. It didn't come by a capitulation by the Catholic Church to modernity. Rather, it came to a deeper understanding of the resources of their own tradition, namely human dignity. And it was in the exploration and in the elaboration of the concept of human dignity that the commitment to religious freedom was found. And the result we see in the post-World War II era is that there are very low legal restrictions and social hostilities with respect to religion in Catholic majority countries. This same concept, karama, human dignity, is at the very heart of Islam. And so it is going to be up to Muslim scholars to mine and utilize the resources of the tradition to find the resources for tolerance, pluralism, and freedom that is analogous in some ways to what the Catholic Church managed to do with their tradition. It will be a little harder for Islam because it's not a hierarchical faith in the same way that the Catholic Church is. And so it's more difficult to generate consensus that then is implemented throughout the rank and file. But what it does is it creates a tremendous opportunity for countries such as Indonesia that are committed to a understanding of Islam, which is tolerant and plural and inclusive of others and respectful of others, to really explore and explain those resources to others. That's why our center has been involved in these programs on Sharia and human rights here in Indonesia for the last half decade or so. We really think that the legal system of Islamic law and the legal system of international human rights law have a lot more to say to each other about concepts like not just human dignity, but justice, peace. Justice, of course, is one of the names of Allah in a famous hadith. Peace, it's the name of the religion, right? Salam. And so if you think, what was the organizing principle for the United Nations? It was peace. And so the idea that has been gaining traction in Asia, that human rights are some sort of Western imperial imposition, is not only very much in conflict with the history of how human rights came about, it's also not consonant with the important values that are shared between Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism and human rights. And so we think there is a lot of opportunity for other countries with dominant religious majorities to seek within their traditions religious defenses of religious freedom and human rights that will be persuasive to co-religionists, people within our own traditions. So that's point number one. Now I want to turn attention and talk just a little bit about three issues in the United States. The first has to do in general with religious freedom rights for minorities in the United States. The story here is generally quite positive. For example, the last important case decided by the US Supreme Court involving Islam involved a Muslim prisoner who wanted to wear a beard in keeping with his faith. And he was told by prison authorities that he could not. He wanted his beard to be 1/2 inch long, so I don't know, 15 millimeters or so quite small. And he was told no, and he was told no because it was a safety hazard, because there might be a weapon hidden inside the beard, or there might be narcotics, some sort of contraband hidden in the beard. And this case went all the way to the Supreme Court. He argued that this violated his religious freedom under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which says that if the government burdens religious exercise, they have to show a compelling state interest. The state said it was safety, and that there was no less restrictive means of accomplishing that interest. Well, the Supreme Court almost laughed out loud at the state's argument, and by a 9-0 decision, ruled in favor of the Muslim prisoner. And believe me, I'm even adopting our president's speech patterns. Believe me. That does not happen very often, especially on contested constitutional issues like freedom of religion. And so, in some ways, the protection of religious freedom, even for minorities, is quite good. Now, speaking of the dear leader, the Trump travel ban. This, of course, is the issue that's been getting the most attention in the United States recently. This is a travel pause, technically, that the Trump administration placed on travelers from 6 Muslim majority countries. Those countries are Iran, Libya, Sudan, Syria, Yemen, and initially Somalia. Somalia, I think, later was taken off in the second iteration of the travel pause. And if this is a Muslim ban, it's not a very effective one, because there are only about 90,000 people from these 5 countries that have visas to travel to the United States. And if you consider that in comparison to the over 1 billion Muslims in the world, if you're trying to keep Muslims out, you'd have a hard time finding a less effective or comprehensive way of doing it. Nevertheless, the rhetoric that accompanied this was Donald Trump in the campaign saying things like, quote, "We must have a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States." And so the travel ban itself applies to everyone from these 6 countries. And there are certain exceptions. There are exceptions for people with family members. There are exceptions for people who are enrolled students. There are exceptions for people who have bona fide affiliations with corporations or other sources of employment. But nevertheless, the harm that has been done to the feeling of Muslims around the world about the United States' attitude towards them, I think has been incalculably harmful because of the way in which it's articulated. And so the legal issue is going to come down to whether the Supreme Court accepts what the text of the travel restriction says, which does not discriminate on the basis of religion, or whether they take into account the purpose and effect of the travel ban. And so one of the things I teach is interpretation. And there are 2 primary competing theories of interpretation. One is text, and the other is intent. And this really comes down to which of those 2 theories of interpretation the court chooses to embrace. But as I said, the real damage that has been done is by the sense that President Trump projected that there's a big problem with Muslims, and that this is the character of the problem that needs to be addressed. And so, as Mrs. Wahid emphasized, this is really significant and something that we ought to be very concerned about. All right. The final topic I wanted to talk about is what is really the important tension that's taking place regarding religion in the United States today. And that is a contest between gay rights on the one hand and religious freedom on the other hand. For many on the left of the political spectrum, religious freedom has come to seem to be code for the right to discriminate against gay people. And for many on the right, the gay rights agenda has become sort of a cultural war designed to impose the left's view of social morality on everyone, and that will not tolerate any dissent. This conflict is illustrated through a case that the Supreme Court just decided a few weeks ago that it would hear in the coming term. And I think I'll mention it briefly because you may be hearing about it. It's the Colorado cake baker case. It's called the Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Council. There's a small bakery with just 1 or 2 employees with a conservative Christian proprietor, and a same-sex couple came in and asked for him to prepare a cake for their wedding. And he told them that he would make a cake for them, but not for their wedding. He'd do it for a birthday or for some other event, but because of his conscientious objection to same-sex marriage, based on his faith, based upon his religious convictions, he could not in good faith participate in preparing the cake. They left. It became a public outcry. Another bakery prepared a cake for them for free, but they complained to the Human Rights Council in Colorado, and Colorado has a law prohibiting discrimination on the basis of religion and also on the basis of sexual orientation. And this cake shop was held to be in violation of the non-discrimination statute. And so the upshot is they are forced to either shut down or to not discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation in the preparation of cakes. Now, this case will turn on freedom of religion and freedom of expression. And in a way, the freedom of expression argument, I think, is more likely to be the key to the case. Because the bakery characterizes this as expressive conduct. The briefs for the bakery do not describe him as a baker, they describe him as a cake artist. And they basically say this is expressive conduct, that when you are baking a cake, you are doing something which is not just flipping a hamburger on a grill, but something which really inserts more of yourself. And everyone agrees that if a member of the Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacist group, went to a black baker and said, "Bake us a KKK cake," they would not have to do it. And everyone agrees that if you went to the cake shop and asked for a sexually explicit cake, maybe you wanted a naked body depicted in icing on the cake, the bakery would have the right not to do it. But if you were a interracial couple, a black and a white man and woman, and the baker said, "I refuse to do this because of I'm against interracial marriage," everyone expects that the baker would lose that case. And so the question is, how much does this look like the racial type of discrimination, and to what extent can it be differentiated from that? Basically, what the baker says is, I'm not discriminating based on their sexual orientation. I'm taking a stand based on the message that they're asking me to communicate. Now, the state makes an interesting argument. They say, well, baking a cake is not communicating a message. But on the other hand, refusing to bake the cake is discrimination. And so there's something a little bit strange about saying that baking a cake does not make a difference, but refusing to bake a cake makes a huge difference. It's sort of analytically, it's a little bit tricky. But it really comes down to this idea of expressive conduct. For the baker, he says this is expressive, and for the state, they say this is conduct. This is just baking a cake. And so you can imagine the court coming out either way. And this is a little bit detailed about U.S. court politics, but the court did not accept this case until the new Supreme Court Justice, Neil Gorsuch, was confirmed. And so the case had languished on their docket for months before it was decided that they would take the case. And it takes 4 justices to agree to take the case. So there's a strong sense that there are at least 4 justices who are probably willing to side with the cake baker, and we'll find out next June, probably on the last day of the court's term, whether or not there's a religious freedom right to dissent from participating in the celebration of the same-sex marriage. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor. It's like 15 minutes we were in United States. I just cannot imagine how the discourse about the freedom of religion and freedom of expression in the state, it's too complicated and it's like too tricky, right? Ladies and gentlemen, and now we will hear about the explanation for the Indonesian situation on relation between majority and minorities religious group from the government. Here we have Dr. Ferry Meldi. He is chairman of the Center for Religious Harmony, Ministry for Religious Affairs, Republic of Indonesia. Previously, he served in various positions within the Ministry of Religious Affairs, including as head of Religious Harmony Institution and the Religious Institution Development Board, head of Organizational Bureau and Secretariat Administration, and head of Religious Information and Public Relations Center. He received his PhD from George Mason University in 2005, his master's degree in public policy from State University of New York at Albany, and his bachelor's degree in public policy at Gajah Mada University, Jakarta.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon we're supposed to have the Secretary General of Ministry of Religious Affairs here. Unfortunately, he cannot come and he asked me to come here, so I will deliver his presentation which he has prepared. So I will talk a little bit about current trend and issues about religious minority and majority in Indonesia, and who are the religious majority and minority, and what kind of relation among the religious people in Indonesia, and also at the end we will talk a little bit about what the government, Indonesian government, have done so far in maintaining the religious harmony in Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, as we might know together that in terms of national population in Indonesia, Muslim is the majority. So 87% of the population in Indonesia is Muslim, and Christians 7%, Catholic 3%, and the rest is Hindu, Buddhist, and Confucianism and others. But if we see from other perspective, from regional, provinces, and districts level, we will find that Islam is not a majority in some areas. If you go to Bali, 88% is Hindus over there. If you go to North Sulawesi, over there 62% is Christian. If you go to Papua also and West Papua, the majority is Christian. And if you go to East Nusa Tenggara, we will find that Catholic is a majority over there. So finding this data, I think you can right now can be understand why the government concerns about the organization who try to make Indonesian a theocracy or state that based on the religion. Because if we talk about the unity of Indonesia, then we cannot talk about one religion as the base of the state. Because some provinces in Indonesia, the majority is not Muslim. Even if you go to some districts, almost 100%, for example, in some districts in Maluku, you can find 100% of the people over there is Christian. And if you go to some other districts, for example, in Aceh, 100% of the people over there is Muslim. So this condition is make me have to be very careful and concerned about the unity of Indonesia right now. So, in terms of political, social, and economic matters, a small group can dominate and govern other big groups. Like Ibu Yeni also, Ibu Yeni asked by many people about the Ahok group, Ahok case. The same with me in our office. We always, time to time, asked by the foreigners or the friends from outside about Ahok cases. I told them that in Indonesia, in some provinces, in some districts, even though the majority is Muslim, but the major of the governors it might be a Christian. You can find in some provinces in Kalimantan, for example, the majority is Muslim, but the governor is not Muslim. If you go to some district, also like that. So, they accuse us that based of Ahok cases that Indonesia is a intolerance state. I told them that it doesn't make sense because we really tolerant state. You can find many cases in provinces and district levels. So, in terms of interreligious relation in the people in Indonesia, there are three kinds of relation between religion and the people. First is relation among the people in a religion, and then the relation between different religion, and then the last one is relation between people in the religion with the state. I need to talk about this because we find many intolerance incidents in Indonesia, as Ibu Yeni said before. Yeni Institute, Wahid Institute, and also Star Institute survey about intolerance incident in Indonesia. It's happened not only in sometimes it's not only one religion, but sometimes between one religion and another religion. And the finding says that the state have a problem with the people in terms of tolerance in Indonesia. So in Indonesia, there are 6 religions there by Indonesian people. Additionally, there are also other religions and beliefs. I think that's right now is the main problem in Indonesia right now. The government only serve 6 religions, while more than 4 million of people, more than 4 million people who follow another than 6 religion. So that creates many problems. We work like that. We want to solve this problem. Right now, we prepare the new law. We prepare a new law to solve the problem. Hopefully, next year the law will go to the parliament, and then we can solve this problem. The government really cannot do anything right now to serve the people who follow outside the 6 religion right now, because there is no regulation that can help us. So hopefully, please support us, the government, to have a new law next year. So we work together and we can solve many problems about intolerance among the people in Indonesia. Finally I have so many something to say, but I would like to finally I wanted to tell you how we work in the government to maintain and keep the religious harmony in Indonesia. Right now, we in the ministry uh, have has a forum in every province and every district. In 34 provinces, we have a forum we call FKUB, Religious Harmony Forum, and we have 514 forum in every district in Indonesia. We really work together how to keep the religious harmony, to press the number of the incidents. Uh, if you know, then we work very hard every day. The forum work hard every day uh, to maintain the religious harmony in Indonesia. I cannot imagine if there is no forum like this in Indonesia right now, because so many incidents. I just come back from Maluku a few days ago. Over there, 100% of the people in the district is a Christian Protestant. I thought that there is no conflict over there, but I found some still some incident of tolerance came up in the society, even though in the same religion. So in the small cities, and there is no internet over there because you cannot make any phone call. There's no signal over there. The number that Setara Institute and Wahid Institute found every year about the incident of intolerance is fine. It doesn't. I think that's not. We still work together to make every years to solve the problems that appear among the people. I think we can discuss a little bit later because I need to give some more one more presentation so that we can discuss if you have any question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ferry, for the presentation about the role of government. Setara Institute and also Wahid Institute every year always publish its annual report on condition of freedom of religion in Indonesia. The report is only covered it's like the iceberg. It's only the appear, not in the fact, because what we have recorded in our reports is only mentioned in the mass media, even online or printed media. That's why we believe that it's only a small number that can be recorded, because there are a lot of incidents and also a violation on freedom of religion belief that could not be accessed or recorded. But we still believe in government that they have willing, they have good willing to solve and to make this decrease and decrease in every year, because it's the government duty, it's the state duty to protect, to fulfill, and to provide any citizen, no matter what their religion, no matter what their belief, they have the rights to get the service from the government. And the last presentation will be delivered by Feby Yonesta. He is the chairman of SWACA, the Indonesian Civil Society Network for Refugee Protection, and the head of Organizational Development on Indonesian Legal Aid Foundation, or the LBHI. Prior to that, he was the former director for Jakarta Legal Aid Foundation, or LBH Jakarta, where he started his law career as a lawyer assistant in 2005. Mas Yonesta has been involved in legal advocacy, research, and strategic litigation. This includes the advocacy and research on freedom of religion or belief, anti-torture, refugee protection, and fair trial. He also has experience in conducting community legal empowerment and developing more legal initiatives. He has participated in various domestic and international forums on legal aid and human rights, often as an expert speaker. These have included speaking on migration-related topics at the International Law Conference in Jakarta, Pro Bono Conference in Singapore, and Asia Refugee Legal Aid Workshop in Kuala Lumpur. Currently, he is also serving as part of the steering committee of the Southeast Asian Legal Aid Network, an internal secretariat of Sea Lawyers, the Southeast Asian Lawyers Network, and board of HRWG, the Indonesian Coalition for International Human Rights Advocacy. He received his bachelor's degree in law from Hasanuddin University in 2002. The time is just 2 minutes. 10 minutes.
Thank you. My deepest appreciation to USINDO for holding this religious conference. It is my honor to speak before all of distinguished speakers and participants. I was requested to share with you on my opinion about the Indonesian policy toward religious minorities. So allow me to start with reminding all of us about the Indonesian legal framework on these particular issues. The right of everyone, regardless their religious backgrounds, are supposed to be guaranteed under the Indonesian Constitution. Furthermore, the Constitution specifically ensures the right to freedom of religion and belief in its Article 28 and 29, and also the right of religious minorities in our constitutions. In addition to that, some of human rights instruments that apply domestically or that have been adopted or ratified, the right of religious minorities in the scope of freedom of religions or in the scope of non-discrimination have also been ensured. But in contradiction to what has been said by the constitutions and by some human rights legal instrument, the reality shows otherwise. The rights of religious minorities in manifesting their religions or beliefs have been continuously violated without any adequate protections or any fair redress mechanism for the victims. To see whether or not religious minorities' rights have been violated, we must look into the concept of freedom of religion or belief that covers first, freedom to adopt religion or belief of his choice. Second, freedom to manifest religion or belief with community in public or private, which include but not limited to freedom of worship and freedom to maintain the place of worship. Third, freedom from any religious coercion, including not being forced, not being criminalized, and not being discriminated against. And the last is a freedom from any unlawful restriction or limitation in manifesting one's religion or belief. Based on those concepts, some cases have shown that religious minorities cannot freely adopt their religious convictions, interpretation, as well as tenets of their choices. Some religious minorities groups like Eden Community, the Ahmadis, or the CI have experienced violent assault, discrimination, or even criminalizations by adopting religious convictions that differ from most mainstream Muslims. They were forced to leave their convictions and join the mainstream religious teachings. Other cases have shown that religious minorities cannot freely manifest their religion in public or private. Some Christian congregations were difficult to maintain their churches. Some of Ahmadis mosques were closed down or destroyed. They cannot even freely hold any religious gathering or pray, where they need to keep it secret if they insist to hold religious congregation. Limitation or restriction were sometimes being imposed by the government in local or national level by banning or dispersing religious expression of the minorities without meeting the justified clauses of limitations. So I have observed that such continuous violation caused by the lack of political will of the government of any regimes to find durable solutions in upholding the rights of religious minorities, which historically coloring the Indonesian dark side of democracy. Let me draw you back to 1965 as the turning point of Indonesian religious minorities' dark history. It was the time when the old order regime enacted the Presidential Decree number 1 of 1965, well known as the Blasphemy Law. By claiming the state of emergency, President Sukarno signed a decree that aiming at first the preferential protection toward six major religions, namely Islam, Christian, Catholic, Hindu, Buddhism, and Confucian. Second, limitation against traditional belief and any form of new religious movement. The third, prohibition against any form of propagating religious deviant interpretations or expressions. And the fourth is prohibition against any form of propagating blasphemy or atheism. Instead of revoking the decree, the new order regimes under Suharto upscaling the emergency decree into a permanent law in 1969. It was then the law has created a domino effect to continuously violate the religious minority. The law's domino effect can be seen in first, the misconception of the recognized or official religion only to the sixth religion means mentioned in the blasphemy law, where then it drives prolonged discrimination and coercion in the field of public service. Any citizens who do not belong to the sixth religion have experienced difficulties in obtaining their identification card, birth registration, marital registration, as well as that. In order to obtain the equal services, citizens were forced to choose one of the six religions, especially those who belong to traditional belief. It was that before the civil administration law enacted. The second, the domino effect can be seen the legitimated act of intolerance against religious minorities, where the mainstream religions tend to use the law as a justification to incite hate speech, invoking violent assault, as well as other forms of coercion. The law has given authority to religious clerics to outlawing those who hold different religious interpretation or expressions, which then will be proceed with demanding the law enforcement to take action against the minorities. The unjustified restriction and coercion was imposed by the government in any regime using this law. Setara Institute has recorded 97 cases of blasphemy were charged using the article of 101 56A of the law. The coordination government bodies under the Attorney General, so-called Tim Pakem, founded in 1994, has banned and monitored hundreds of religious minority groups that consider deviant. Among them are Eden community, the Ahmadis, the Mila Abraham community, or well known as Gavatar, and many more. Most cases of criminalization or banning were closely related to religious interpretation or conviction that, theoretically speaking, constitute the forum internum of religious freedom, thereby it has violated the principle of non-derigible. Okay, and I also want to highlight the let's just skip to the joint ministerial decree of House of Worship. The ministerial decree that was enacted in 2006 under President SBY administration have somewhat driven religious intolerance and discrimination against the minorities. The Christians and the Catholic are the most religious minorities who suffer from the enactment of the decree. Not only that they find difficulties in fulfilling the administrative requirement in building churches, in result of discriminatory tendency or even also extortions. They also face a massive intolerant protest from the mobs. Ironically, such discriminatory and intolerant behavior against the Christian has triggered some similar retaliations behavior in the predominant Christian areas of the countries. Similar patterns of discriminations and intolerance was found to be using the 26th Joint Ministerial Decree. The most fatal provision of the decree that give room to discrimination and intolerance is the requirement that oblige religious minority to ask permission from 60 people from the neighborhood in building house of worship. This provision has practically been interpreted as the permission from the majority religions in the neighborhood, even when the minority has fulfilled the permission. Some effort to challenge the received permission were still being conducted, including with lawsuits, more protests, or even with a non-executable court decisions. And I really need to highlight this, even though I running out of time about the Perpu Ormas, because this is a current issues right now. It is well noted that some religious intolerant groups have spread hatred or even violent attacks against minorities that jeopardize the unity of the nations and obviously contradict the principle of Pancasila. The government claimed that they have no authority to disperse the group due to lack of sanctions that enable the government to restrict and dissolve the intolerant organizations. In order to give the power a power to act against the intolerant, the government has just recently issued a substitute regulation to amend the law on civil society organizations, so-called Perpu Ormas. However, in contrary with its reasoning, the Perpu is targeting any organization who are considered possessing ideology that contradict to Pancasila, inciting religious hostilities, or committing blasphemy. The only reasonable provision of the Perpu is the prohibition of any organization who incite religious hostilities, while the other provisions might violate the freedom of association, freedom of thought, and freedom of religion or belief. The Perpu has even upgraded the sanction against the religious blasphemy up to 20 years imprisonment. There is no sign that Perpu is targeting religious hostilities or hatred. Instead, it targets those who are considered as endangering political stability or of the current regime. Either it is the religious-based political opponent or the religious minorities. If the government has willingness, they could actually have enforced the law against any act of intolerance or hostilities by using this law. So, what actually the government can do in this specific topics? First, revoking any discriminatory laws and regulations to comply with the human rights standards that protect religious minorities. Second, stop applying any discriminatory laws and regulation when any legislative measures cannot get immediate result. For instance, the police force can stop criminalizing different religious believer by using the blasphemy law. Third, firmly enforce the existing law to prohibit any advocacy of religious hatred, which constitute incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence, without making any new regulation or laws. We have sufficient existing laws that can be enforced. Fourth, stop exploiting religious identity to secure political positions. And the fifth is creating and executing a comprehensive national and local action plan to increase religious tolerance and freedom of religion or belief through the education system at any level, as well as through every channels of social communications. I will end my sharing right here for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Levi, for amazing recommendation that should be done immediately. It seems unfair because from Indonesian sides we have looked at three perspectives: from the government, from the legal perspective, and also from the social perspective. And we only hear just a glance of from American side, and that's covered all perspective from Professor Staff. And now we will open question session, question and answer session, and I will give like 5 person who wants to ask. Please raise your hand, and please tell your name and your organization or your organization or institution. The first is yes.
Sit down or stand up?
stand up, it will be great.
Just simple.
My name is Yuda, and I'm Human Rights Advisor for British Petroleum. Simple words, interpretation. So my questions, perhaps for Professor Sharps and also Wahid. How would we drive the wave of interpretation? 3 points. Point number one, MUI, Indonesian Ulama Council in 2000. They published their fatwa about human rights. And they said in the fatwa that United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, some of the articles are not compatible with Islam, especially in Article 18 in terms of religious conversion. Point number two, there was a chance for me personally, I sat together with Kiai Said Abdul Siraj, I think several months ago. And then the chair of the largest Islamic organizations in the world with 90 million followers, and ulama say that gay right is not compatible with Islam. And the third one is the one that you mentioned, that the interpretations is depending a lot about one's point of view. And then, as I understood personally, maybe it's right, maybe it's not right, the difference between human rights interpretations of some countries, because human rights is coming from the thought of the people, while in Islam, human rights is not from the people, it is granted from the Almighty in terms of Sunnah and also Al-Quran. So my question is one, is how would we drive that wave of interpretations? Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Yuda. The second is Bapak.
My name is Raharjo Mustaja. I am a retired civil servant, PNS. My question is addressed to Dr. Ved, who represents the government. I wonder why one great Abrahamic religion is left out from being recognized. You know what I mean? Religion? Yeah.
What religion? Judaism?
Judaism, yes.
Okay.
Does it have no followers? Yes. If you go to Surabaya, they have a synagogue there, Jalan Kayu. So, and one of the rukun iman of Islam is we have to believe in, yes, in the Rasuls and religions. So, I wonder why. You represent the government, and I address this question to you. Thank you.
Alison.
Hello, my name is Allison, as Mas Amin mentioned, I am Ghanaian and Syrian. My question is for Ibu Yeni. You mentioned some of the things that drive people to rise. And a lot of the reason, or a lot of the programs that can be used to combat that seem like they should come from the government, like promoting equity and similar programs so that people don't feel this injustice. And I'm wondering, my question is, what role does the tolerant majority have? That 74%, the 250 plus million people. What role do you see them playing in combating radicalism and politics?
The fourth is belakang dulu di standing. Yes.
My name is Manasir. I'm from sayacintaindonesia.com. I want to ask to Bu Yeni, on your research, you mentioned that Jawa Barat is the most intolerance in our country. Why that happen? I mean, what's the cause? Is that because they are the population maybe or anything? Thank you.
The last.
My name is Diaz. I'm a Mila Abraham followers, well known as ex-Gavata. I specifically want to ask to Mr. Shah that actually in Indonesia there's a lot of diverse culture and religion too, but mostly majority. I mean, according to this title of this event, is a majority, minority, and the state. And in America, there's a lot of diversity in religion and culture, which is in Indonesia, there is only like, majority Muslim. But in America, there's a lot of diversity on radicals. Like, for example, there's also Muslim extremists too there, and then Ku Klux Klan or Scientology, FLDS, or not to mention other Christian radicals. Here, we only have like majority, mostly like one. And then how how does the government control all those radicals to live in harmony? Well, there's lots of issues there, but not as big as this one. Like this one is like biggest issue. But in America, there's lots of them. I mean, I saw on YouTube there's a lot of hate speech too there, intolerance, discriminations, but still, it's not like the biggest issue, which is where there's lots of them in America, but in Indonesia only like very few. Yes, we have like Jehovah Witness here and other Christian radicals, very few. But how does the government control that? Thank you.
I think enough for the 5 questions. Yes. Professor, you might respond for the question from Mas Yuda and also Ms. Jess. Mr. Jess, please correct related with each other.
All right. To say that there's opportunity for dialogue and discourse between human rights as a legal perspective and Islamic law as a legal perspective doesn't mean that there's going to be agreement on all issues. I'd be surprised if there were agreement within Islam and within human rights on some of the issues that you mentioned in particular, like gay rights and conversion. Conversion was very controversial from the beginning. When the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was passed unanimously by the General Assembly on December 10th, 1948, there were a few countries that abstained, including Saudi Arabia, and they abstained explicitly, among other reasons, because of their objection to the inclusion of the word change in the right with respect to freedom of religion and belief. Other Muslim countries, such as Pakistan, explicitly said, we don't have a problem with this at all, because after all, Islam is a proselytizing faith. We want people to join the true church, the true faith of Islam. And it would be hypocritical of us to say that you can convert to Islam, but you cannot convert to other faiths. And so I think that both views exist and have existed for a long time within Islam. Almost every religious tradition takes apostasy seriously. No religious tradition really likes apostasy very much. And there are a lot of Muslim scholars who note that in the Quran, the prohibitions on apostasy are all very much tied up to things that look like a desertion or being a traitor. And after all, we still treat traitors, we punish them in the West as well. So I think part of the challenge for Islam may be to contextualize the prohibitions on conversion by noting that there are punishments meted out by God rather than by man, and also noting that they took place in a context of warfare where conversion was tantamount to treason. And today, conversion does not usually look like treason. Now, it's not for me as a non-Muslim to try to make definitively those arguments, but those are the sorts of arguments that I've heard Muslim scholars around the world making. How to drive a wave of interpretation, I think, simply takes effort. If you look at the preamble to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it basically says that the primary way that human rights are going to be implemented is by keeping those rights present in the memory of all people and promoting them through education and learning. And so my own view is the primary way in which cultures of human rights are going to be built won't be through legal implementation, although I'm a lawyer, I kind of like the law. It's going to be largely through education. And it's also going to take place at all levels of law and society. When I talk about how are human rights implemented, it's not so much at the UN, it's much more through constitutions. It turns out that almost every constitution has been enacted since World War II, and almost all of them contain human rights language. Then you have statutes, you have municipal laws. Most of the discrimination in the United States that takes place against religious groups takes place in town councils. It's zoning disputes where religious discrimination takes place. So that is the level at which it needs to be addressed. But it also needs to be addressed through education, through media, through social organization, and as I've argued in my main presentation, through religious groups and religious tradition. I think it's primarily going to be religious people convincing people in their own religious tradition that their religious traditions are respectful of human rights, that we will get the wave of interpretation that you're hoping for. To turn to the second question about dealing with radicals in the United States, you're quite right. There's quite a lot, and they come in quite a lot of varieties. It's one of the features of a free and open society is you get people misusing their freedom in a variety of ways, and also using their freedom in a variety of ways that seem shocking to majorities. What I would say about the U.S. approach is two things. First, it's very diffuse. There's no Ministry of Religious Affairs. There's no specific effort to deal with the religion problem. Where is religion regulated in the United States? The most powerful regulatory mechanism is the tax code, which prohibits political activity of churches. And so we don't have religious political parties in the United States, for example. And the reason we don't is because they would lose their tax-exempt status, and this is important to people. But the other place that it's enforced is the nonprofit law statutes, which are governed by state to state to state. And so it's the attorneys general of the various states that are going to hold accountable religious organizations. But it's primarily the court of public opinion. It's the competition for donations, and it is publicity through the media and increasingly informal media that you have the regulation and oversight of groups. The second thing I would say, in addition to it being very diffuse and decentralized, is it's very ordinary. The way you address the problems is through the ordinary criminal law. If someone is sexually abusing a child, you don't adopt a special law on sexual abuse by priests. You enforce your laws about sexual abuse of children against priests. And if someone is committing fraud, you use the ordinary rules of fraud. If someone is, violating health and safety rules. If someone is performing illegal operations, there's been a little uptick in female genital cutting, FGM, female genital mutilation in the United States. And that's going to be addressed through ordinary laws that address unauthorized medical procedures. And so, for the most part, and this isn't unique to the United States, for the most part, the most effective strategies for dealing with the unusual problems that arise is to use the usual mechanisms for regulation that exist.
You don't have a blasphemy article, if I'm mistaken, right? In the
Yeah, there's no blasphemy law in the United States. In fact, blasphemy is a constitutionally protected right. My own religion, I'm a Mormon. I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. One of the most popular plays on Broadway is called The Book of Mormon, and it is a blasphemous ridicule of what we hold most sacred, our sacred text. And so the Mormon Church's reaction was a little bit interesting. They took out an advertisement in the playbill and said, "You've seen the play, please read the book." And they gave a telephone number where you can call to receive a free copy. So I think that to live in a free and open society, you kind of have to have a thick skin, and you have to be ready to be ridiculed, and you have to kind of roll with those punches. Do I like it? No. Do I want to treat other people's religion with the contempt that some people treat mine? No. But can I live in a society where freedom protects the right to do that, even at times when I don't appreciate the exercise of that freedom? It's hard to know exactly where to draw the lines, but I think that we can have healthy societies that are quite respectful of unhealthy behavior by some people.
In fact, it's not just the religious issues that is quite different from the United States perspective in Indonesia. Even the right to insult the state also, right? I mean, here, you remember the case in which President Yudhoyono was very upset when a bunch of demonstrators brought some buffalo for demonstration. He's really upset, and that, yeah, it's, you know, said that it's or some people from his party said that it's an insult to the president. But in the U.S., you can do whatever you want with Donald Trump's statue, or you know, you can, you know. So it's not just about religion. That is that constitutes how define the freedom of expressions in both countries.
China has just illegalized depictions of Winnie the Pooh because it is a secret depiction of Xi, the president. So that's a lot of sensitivity to ridicule if you can't allow Winnie the Pooh.
But of course, like you said, there's the contrast between perspectives. And in this case, some religious perspectives can run into a problem when you look at it from the rational or Western point of view. For example, this is new thing, is the halal butcher. So for Muslims here, we really have no problem. When I first came to meet most Muslims in Western countries, they raised the issues of halal butcher. I said, what's the big deal? I said, well, here, it's the animal rights protesting against the slaughter of cows and other animals. For them, it's such an inhuman way. So for them, they cannot just cut the throat, slit the throat. For them, it's inhuman against the animal rights. It has to be through a stunt. Yeah. So again, you know, there's always the potential for contentions on these kind of issues as well. So on the issues of the UN declarations of human rights and how to reconcile that with the Islamic faith, if you look at the Islamic traditions, in fact, or even the Islamic text in the Quran, so this first says, La ikraha fid din, there's no coercion in religion. Or if you look at examples of how the Prophet allowed 12 Muslims previously Muslims who then converted to Christianity and then went to Habasi, Ethiopia now, and he allowed that to happen. So if you look at Islamic traditions, there are various variety of examples and legal resources because the conduct of the Prophet as well as the Quran are sources of legality in Islam. So it comes down to interpretation, like what you said, and whose interpretation is going to prevail in the society. Indonesia, I mean, even though the majority of the populations are Muslims, but we don't have any specific law that says people cannot convert. People can convert easily here. It's always there's no legal ramifications for conversions. You can convert, unconvert, convert to other things. We've seen that happen. So no problem. Apostasy in Islamic law, of course, has the consequences of death penalty. But in Indonesia, it's not being practiced. So really, it's a reconciliation happens in a sense through tradition. Here, people develop their own wisdom of what applies to or not what applies in this context. So that hence for example, the term Islam Nusantara, the archipelago Islam, the traditions of Islam is practiced in this part of the world, which is very different from traditions of Islam that is practiced in Saudi Arabia. Here, Islam allows women's participation in the society, protections of minority rights, even rights of conversion. So again, it's about you need to contest that. So just like in the US, it's an ability to convince others about your idea. And the same thing with gay rights. I mean, gay rights is not just in Islam, in many religious beliefs. Gay rights are not legally sanctioned at all, or even worse, it's prohibited. But here you don't see any gays being prosecuted for being gays. So, but I think it's also going to be a challenge for them if they demand such rights, for example, as same-sex marriage and all that. So there will be backlash. There will be what do you call it? A clear resistance against that. But in Islam, I mean, even the Prophet's time, they were gays, and they were not sentenced to death, as some of the classical texts actually suggest. So there's so many different sources of religious, of legal standings that really it is a matter of who can manage to convince people through using what legal elements of the very rich and varied source of legal context in Islam. Even if you look at the mazhab, the what you call the streams of thoughts in Islam, between all these imams, they have totally different ways of looking at things. For example, for the Shafi'ites, the majority of Muslims here, having a dog, the whole dog is haram. But I was told that in Hanafi, it's only the saliva of the dog that is haram. So owning a dog is fine as long as after you touch the dog, then you wash your hands. So again, this is interpretation. So that's why you find many Muslims in Egypt actually have dog pets. So so it's really so many different interpretations. And what constitutes in Shafi, there are certain foods that's haram, but in Hanafi or in Hanbali, it's actually halal. Really depends on whether you can convince people of your opinions. Boleh nggak saya bantu jawab Pak Ferry tentang Judaism? Susah ya? Why is Judaism not recognized? It's so difficult to even to promote a recognition of even any religious belief. I mean, taking the example of my dad's administration, when he decided to promote Confucianism as a recognized as a recognized religion, the resistance that he faced from the radical Muslims is huge. He was said, they said that he's promoting the penyembah berhala, what do you call the paganism. Paganism is something, there's idolatries and paganism, something that Islam fought for in the first instances, So this is like a big crime. So it always requires political cost. So whether the government is willing to bear that cost, whether it's a priority, that's the reason why Judaism is not being recognized, because it entails political cost. And when Baha'i, it's just recently being recognized, but after how many years? 20 years? 20 years of process, lobbying and such. So that's, I'm just trying to help Pak Ferry.
Thank you.
Because the government official is got time and anyway, so yeah.
Can we pause it, because maybe it's better to hear directly from the government side. Then we will continue. Okay, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Arajo, why the government cannot recognize? I think the government recognize all of the religion in Indonesia, but the government cannot serve them. That's the difference. So when President Abdurrahman Wahid decided to serve Confucianists, it creates so many complications. Let me tell you an example how difficult when the government decided to serve the Confucianism. In the law of national education, it says clearly, explicitly, says that every student have to get a religious subject. Every student, okay, teaching from the teacher the same religion. That means that government have to provide books, curriculums, guidelines, teachers. Okay. Then another law, the law about teacher law. It says that to be a teacher, you have to get a bachelor degree as one. That to be a teacher to teach Confucianism, you have to get a bachelor degree. So, which means government have to produce a teacher, and you have to establish the college, the university to produce the teacher. Okay? And another law, a law about lecturers. It says that to be a lecturer, you have to get a master's degree, S2. Then to produce the lecturers to teach in the university, to teach people to be Confucianist teachers, that we have to find another school, so that's the kind of complication. That's very difficult for the government. If we really want to serve all of the religion, but so many complications, so many side impact of decision that make us difficult. Judaism, I think right now in Manado still one synagogue over there. A couple months ago, I still received some people, Judaism followers came to the office, to my office. That's fine. You can. That's fine. The government guarantee you can follow your religion, but please don't ask service from the government, because the government have so much difficulties. So please, if we all of us want to from White Institute, from Stein Institute, please ask to the parliament. Okay, produce the law, the new law,
regulation. So the government have to serve all of the religion. Okay, and then you have to fix all of the complication. Something like that. So actually, the government really want to serve all of the religion, no matter what. Yeah, Judaism, even all of local religion also. We want to serve them, but the problem is not as easy as we see. Thank you.
So there's a big implications when it comes. Well, this is what people don't realize. When a religion is recognized, then they are granted certain rights. For example, they are granted a national holiday. So here, all the recognized religion, then we have a holiday for all of them. So actually, the more holidays, the more religions we have, the happier the Indonesians. Might be a university, the more holidays we will have. But unfortunately, it doesn't stop there, because again, you also need to create a directorate general in the department, and then you also need to create a dinas agama in the local levels. So many bureaucratic implications that will come when you recognize all the religions. Or we could go the other way around, that no religion is recognized at all. But it means that we don't have religious holidays. I don't know. Let the people decide. Okay, I'm just going to go to Allison's question. What role does the silent majority can play in combating radicalism? For me, the main thing is not allowing the space being controlled by the radical, by hate speech. So you need to fight back. There was this wisdom before for people who are active in social media realm. They say that, oh, if there's a bully, if there are trolls, just ignore them. Just ignore them, they'll go away. Especially for people and public figures and all that, because it will create more attentions, and you just give them a platform to be famous, blah blah blah. But now the new thinking is that no, you have to fight them. You have to fight them back. You cannot allow them to control the space. You need to also provide an alternative way of looking at the issues. So you have to introduce your perspectives also in a very active way. You see, the problem with moderate majority, even though they're moderate, but they're not active. They're not as committed to the cause as the radicals. So in the words of a friend of mine, Muslim activist from the UK, said there's a symmetry of passion when it comes to the moderates and the radicals. The radicals, they wake up in the morning and they think, what kind of jihad that I'm going to do today? But it doesn't have to be wielding a gun or carrying bombs. It could be just retweeting a message that ISIS produced. That's a jihad for them. The moderates wake up in the morning, the moderate Muslims pray, Christians or Catholics when go to church or whatever, or have breakfast, prepare to go to school, prepare to go to, to go to schools and workplace. So there's no similarity of passion. So you need to occupy the space with similar passion, basically. And that's what the silent majority can do. Also not allowing tyranny of majority over minority. In Indonesia, the tyranny or the intimidation is not only happening or carried out by Muslims, but also by Christians, by Hindus, in a Hindu majority place or a Christian majority place. For example, in Papua, the victims of the discriminations are the non-Christians usually, because Papua is predominantly Christian. In Bali, the cases that we found, the victims are the Muslims, because Bali is predominantly Hindu. So it's this attitude of being, dominant attitude of the dominant group, the majority group, over the minority is what we need to prevent as well. the Jawa Barat, the West Java province. Yes, the statistic is actually quite worrying. I was told by a Densus officer, the anti-terrorism group of the police, they said that 80% of suicide bombers of Indonesia actually came from the West Java province. So that's a statistic. And why is that? Well, there hasn't been any in-depth research carried out in that province, but we could guess that there are many factors. By looking at different provinces, we have this in-depth studies of several provinces that has managed to that actually has high level of tolerance practice in their communities. We look at the factors and what is lacking, and then project that to West Java. We found out that level of leadership matters, and then the level socio-economic impact level as well. Level impacts the society as well, because again, this is the sense of injustice also felt. And the third one is the shared history, shared values as well. And if you look at the West Java's history, there was the NEE there, the Islamic Nation of Indonesia, that was in operation several decades ago. So the families, many families of the suicide bombers actually have linkage to these groups. So even though the group is disbanded, outlawed, but the values are still being kept through generations of the followers. So the ideals of the Islamic State of Indonesia is still being kept. And now it's found its way through different expressions, through being suicide bombers, through being followers of ISIS, etc.
Thank you for all speakers who had answered the questions. It was an interesting discussion, but due to the limitness of the time, that I have to close this session because we want to talk more about this issue, especially from the United States perspective. Thank you for all speakers, and I will listen to the ceremony.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give another round of applause. USINDO wants to thank you all for coming, and we hope that we can see you in our next event. Have a pleasant afternoon. Thank you.
Tapi nggak apa-apa lah. Ya, sudah ya.